Hi guys, welcome to Live Without Training Wheels this Tuesday evening. So glad to have you here. As you can see, I'm joined by my friend Leah Nieman. Oh, I got my volume on my tablet. Excuse me for that. Okay, I'm delighted to be joined by my friend Leah Nieman, who writes at her website, leahnieman.com, and I'm going to tell you more about her in a minute. Actually, I'm going to let her tell you more about her in a minute. But while we're getting started, let me just take care of a few housekeeping details to make sure everybody feels comfortable and knows what to do. If you would not mind, I would love for you to share this broadcast. If you're on Facebook, you probably already know how to do that. And if you are watching from inside Crowdcast, there's a little button up there that says invite. If you click that button, you'll see all the options that you are familiar with to share this with whomever, wherever you'd like. If you're watching from Facebook or YouTube, we would love to have you join us here in Crowdcast. It's a pretty cool place to hang out. But of course, you're welcome to just keep watching on Facebook or YouTube. You're going to get the best engagement in a Crowdcast presentation through a desktop or laptop. But if you're watching from a mobile, that's fine. The best way to do it is to turn your phone or tablet into landscape mode and then push that little square button up in the corner that allows you to view it full screen. And then all you have to do is tap View Chat, and it will bring the chat window right back into focus. While you are waiting for us to get started, you might want to look down at the bottom of the screen. There's a little button that says polls, and I've put a couple of fun polls up there for you guys to look at tonight related to what we're going to be talking about. So as you're listening in, and I'll mention this again later in case folks come in later, but just click on polls and let us know, do you have kids who are on social media yet? And which social media platforms are you personally using? So we'll kind of have an idea of where you are in this whole game and your familiarity with different social media platforms. Also, right next to the button that says polls, there's a button that says ask a question. We've already got 4 questions lined up. So clearly people are chomping at the bit, Leah, to know your wisdom and your advice tonight. So if you've got a question, feel free to drop it in the ask a question box. Also, if you see a question in the box that looks particularly interesting to you, make sure to upvote it, because if we're running short on time, we'll start at the top and go down. So the ones that have been the most voted on are the ones that we're going to start with. Also, if you happen to be watching this on the replay, one of the features that I love about Crowdcast is that I can timestamp each of these questions as we start asking them and answering them. So if you're coming back on the replay, you can click and go directly to the questions that look interesting to you. If you're in a hurry and you just want to skip right to that, you can certainly do that. Or another thing I love about Crowdcast is that if you're watching the replay, you can watch it on high speed. Down at the bottom, not right now because we're live, but down at the bottom there will be a little settings gear icon where you can change the speed. So if you want to watch me talk 3 times faster, you can certainly do that. So all that out of the way, let's talk about social media and teens. Leah, I'm so thankful that you are able to be here with us tonight because I've had conversations with you online and off. And so selfishly, I invited you here so you can help me solve all my teens and social media problems. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, how you got into this whole business and all that?
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for having me. And I don't know if I can solve all your problems, but hopefully we'll just feel empowered as moms, right? Like we're in this together. Yeah. So I kind of got into social media. I tell people like I kind of like fell into it, right? So I was a homeschool mom and I launched a company with a friend. And really that was at the time when like ebooks were just coming out. And so a lot of our marketing was online. So we were doing a lot of digital media. It made sense for our marketing to be on these new emerging platforms, so Facebook and Twitter. So we were using social media for marketing in our company. So that was right about the time that teens were beginning to get on Facebook. And it was controversial. So I began to see, okay, like we're having to talk about this as parents and like understand like what are the parameters, like what are the safety things. And I kind of had like a little bit of an inside view of that because we were using it for marketing. And I started to see parents argue about it. And some of the things we were arguing about, number one, wasn't even accurate. So some of the things that people were doing was like, some of the things that I was hearing parents say was, well, I'm going to say that my daughter is 18 and give her a fake name. And I was like, don't say she's 18. Like, because then people that are older are going to connect with her. So it was just this time where like we were trying to figure out these rules for platforms that, you know, a lot of us didn't understand. And at the same time, the tech industry, not even maybe the tech industry, I think it was more players within that industry were telling us, well, parents, like you have no business even trying to guide your kids through these networks because you don't know them, which again is so blatantly false, because our kids don't need to know how to use Facebook. They figure that out, right? And I tell people all the time, like when we get a piece of IKEA furniture, like none of us know how to put it together. What do? We read the manual. So when these new platforms come out where we learn how to use them, what our kids need is guidance on all these issues, walking through it. So it kind of put me in this world where I had probably maybe a different perspective than other parents had, but it was very, it still was very hard because I was using some of these, but I still couldn't get like advice from my mom friends like we can now. So I just started walking through these platforms with my kids because I was homeschooling and they were home with me all day. And so I was very aware that they are watching me. They're watching how I use these platforms. They're watching how I respond. They're watching my attitude, right? So when I get off social media, how much I'm on social media. And so, so this was happening. And then at the same time, we were doing these online classes. And so it became very aware of the need to begin to teach kids to be wise digital citizens. So it kind of was just this kind of big mix of everything that kind of happened at once. And my kids started saying to me, like, Mom, you need to talk about this. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to talk about this because all my mom friends were all fighting about it. Everyone's arguing. Every now and then we would put out kind of a question on Facebook and say, you know, hey, are your kids on social media? And I mean, people would like argue, and not even nice argue. Like, I mean, they had really strong opinions. So
why would you even ask that? Your children shouldn't be on social media. That's so horrendous. And what kind of parents?
Yeah, it would draw these just really, you know, answers that were, I mean, just on. There was no like happy medium, or, you know, people have like one opinion and the other. So I wasn't going to talk about it. Because,
and so right in the middle of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we took up my first daughter off to college, and she went to Performing Arts College in Los Angeles. And we sat down at that first, it was a parent-student meeting. And the first thing they told these kids was to get on social media. And my daughter, I could feel her like looking at me and my husband. And because we all had this moment of like, what if we hadn't walked her through social media? She would be learning about it from her peers at a secular college in Los Angeles. Right. So it was this kind of like, and I remember like, I remember gasping, and I don't know how audible it was. It felt like it was audible because I remember like, you know, and when we left that room, I was emotional. I just felt like, she's right. Like, I need to be talking about this. And 2 years later, we took my son to college, and they said the same thing to these kids, get on social media. So it was kind of like this big eye-opening thing of like, we've got to be talking to our kids about social media. So that was kind of like my first kind of, you know, we were already doing social media, but that was, I think, the biggest flashing sign of awareness that like, we've really got to be talking about social media with our kids. And I was glad I had the opportunity to walk with it with my kids. You know, it's not always easy, but my kids will tell you now, like it was the best thing ever for our family.
Yeah. So we're just out of curiosity, were the colleges encouraging the kids to get onto social media to connect with each other, or for logistical purposes at the university, or?
For a lot of reasons, to connect with each other, to get information. Like a lot of colleges use Twitter so that they get safety alerts if they have to lock down campus for any reason. And I'll tell you, at my son's university, there's already been a couple of incidences. So if there's, at his particular, there's been a couple robberies, like with it close enough vicinity. If it's within a couple of miles of the campus, they'll send out a Twitter alert that says, hey, kids, like there's been a robbery. The suspect hasn't been caught yet. Just be aware of, they want to protect the kids.
Mm-hmm.
So typically they'll use Twitter for things like that. And they want the parents on Twitter too, because that's their way of, getting you not just that security news, but also news about great things that's happening. Oh, a hockey team is, doing this or winning or, whatever. So a lot of that information comes out on Twitter, on Facebook. It's their way of connecting with groups within the campus. So it's really how you learn about campus life, connect with, your roommates prior to getting to campus, so that you have like a little bit of knowledge of who they are, what they're like, who's bringing the refrigerator for the room, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
All of that stuff happens when they get to college. So it's not that they're encouraging the kids to get on maybe apps that as a parent you don't want them to use, although, there is some of that happening once they get there. But again, that's the reason why I have those talks before they head off to college, right? So that when they get to college, and, like Yik Yak was huge at colleges. And then my kids were calling me and saying, okay, now they're using, Fade or, whatever the trending one is at that time. But
not even names that I've ever heard of.
Yeah. Because a lot of them kind of pop up and then they die down. So, but a lot of the apps that kind of trickle down to our teens, you'll see them rise on college campuses a couple years before, then they trickle down to teens, right? And then they either stay or they fade out. So, but the college campuses themselves, they're using those to stay in touch with the kids. And, definitely, they're encouraging them to get on LinkedIn when they get to college, because they're building their profile. So there's a variety of reasons why they are using social media. But yeah, and the colleges are finding that they are having to teach the kids what to post and what not to post, because a lot of kids, again, like that are around the age of my kids or a little bit older, understood how to work the platforms, but didn't necessarily understand the ramifications of what they did on the platforms long term down the road might have for them. So
layers of understanding what it means to be on social media. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, so as I'm thinking about this and you're talking about, it just never would have occurred to me that when they go to college, there are going to be good reasons for them to be on social media. And so that's just another reason why we'd want to kind of, cross that bridge earlier than just when they're college freshmen. So how did you know when they were ready, how to begin that? I mean, in the United States, driving happens at a certain age, but we all know as parents that just because you turn a magical number doesn't necessarily mean you might have been responsible enough before. You might not yet be responsible enough. I don't know. How do you navigate that with social media?
Right. So you don't necessarily go by the age, because the age of 13 really is that's just kind of a general thing. And then when it says like 18, that's really because, you're dealing with content that's adult, right? And even for some of us adults, it's content that like we may or may not want to see. So, So 13, a lot of apps say 13 because they don't want to follow COPPA, which just protects the child's data. So then what you're dealing with is, as a parent, you're saying, okay, is my child showing readiness? Are they ready to be in this networked public? Because that's what social media is. Social media is communication. It's being in this networked public, and we're communicating. So you're looking for signs that your child is ready for that. Do they understand what friendship is? Do they understand, following, and am I being a follower? Am I being influenced? How to, all of those sorts of things that we talk to our kids about when they're young. And what happens normally before we had social media is, as a parent, you're kind of walking that through them. You're putting them into these, we go to the playground, right? And at a very young age, you're watching your kid interact in these groups. And some kids, you're kind of like, oh, I can kind of like sit and read a book and watch them, right? And they get older and older, and you kind of see that readiness when you can begin to kind of like relax a little as mom. You still have your eye on them, but you know what I mean? You give them a little more leadway until eventually you can take your eye off them a little longer and a little longer, right? But you're still at the playground with them. And what's happened in social media is our kids hit this age and we just put them in the playground and they're there. Like no one's watching them, and then we get very frustrated because things begin to happen in that playground that's not in our child's best interest and is in fact very dangerous.
Yeah.
So we look for those signs of readiness. Like, do we have a child that really struggles to stand up and do what's right when they're in a situation where everyone's saying, oh, let's do this and it's wrong? That child needs a little more protection. They need you to guide them a little more. That's that child that, when they're learning to ride their bike, they're going to fall off a little more. So on social media, they're going to have a little more, there's a lot more character building that you need to do with that child. It's their nature or whatever. So you're going to have to guide that child, hold them a little closer, a little longer, pick them up a little more. So if you just throw them out there on a social media platform too young or unsupervised, they're really going to have issues. So it's understanding that about each unique child, and then understanding, okay, how do the applications work? Are there features that I can make their account private? Can I turn off DM? Can I monitor like that they can only talk to friends? All of that sort of stuff matters. So that's number one. And understanding that age 13 is really just because those platforms don't want to deal with the privacy issue. It's not really saying that that's when your child's ready. As a parent, when your child's ready. So Facebook
is speaking as a legal entity, not as a developmental psychologist.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Yeah. And then, as a parent too, I think looking at that, we're seeing a lot of apps geared towards younger kids. So a lot of apps that are geared towards younger kids are beginning to add what I call social sharing, which is basically a lot of more of the social media built into that gaming. So like really getting there and kind of look at that, make sure like is it moderated? Is it human moderated, or is it not moderated by humans at all? So kind of like, look for that. And the other thing I tell parents to really look for when you're deciding if your child's ready for social media is the relationship that you have with them. Do they come to you? Do they talk to you? Do you have a solid relationship with them? Because there's going to be times where they come to you, because remember, social media, it's communication. And so your role as a parent really in walking with them through social media is you're guiding them through that public network. So when the first time someone says something mean to them on social media, and they don't know how do I handle that, mom? Do I say something mean back? Do I take it off post? That's your value as a parent. And that was where my frustration was. Remember in the early days where they were saying, well, parents, you don't know these platforms. Well, I don't necessarily need to know the platform. I need to teach my child how to use the platform. So I get in there and learn it, right? But the value that I have as a parent to my child, what my child needs to know is, what do I do when these awkward situations, when these teen situations play out in an open public forum? How do I guide them? And those are life skills. Those are skills that your child needs their entire life. I mean, my kids have called me from college and they've been like, hey, remember that time in social media when that really awkward situation happened? Yeah, like that's happening with my roommate now. Like, and it was, yeah. And it's a different situation, but those same skills that I gained when we walked through that was really uncomfortable, I'm using those skills now because I'm in a really close room with this person. And, and so a lot of those skills that they gained and that we worked through. And honestly, like as a mom, I was like, that was those mom moments where I was like, I hate this, why we don't like social media. But, those were, they were laying the foundation for communication skills that my child needed. So it was really never about the platform. It's just, we're having to walk them through an awkward situation. Maybe it was like, I needed to have a talk with another parent about, a communication issue that our kids are having or whatever. Those are those uncomfortable situations that we have when we're raising kids. So that's really the readiness that we're looking for in our child is, are they communicating with us so that when they face those issues, they come to us and they talk to us about it. They don't dig down. They don't make wrong decisions and then dig themselves in deeper, all of those sorts of things.
Oh, that's so wise. That really resonates with me because I tell people about homeschooling, like, yeah, I mean, there's some like picking math curriculum and figuring out how to explain some topic, but a huge part of what's challenging about homeschooling is like all the parenting stuff. What do you do if somebody doesn't want to do what they're supposed to do? What do you do if two kids are fighting and it's interrupting? Like it's, it's so much, it's like not a lot of the struggles that we have are just homeschool specific and nobody else would ever deal with this. And so I hear you saying, like, even though if it might feel like it's a Facebook problem, no, it's just a character issue or a communication problem or a relationship skills thing. And yeah, it's showing up on Facebook in this particular setting, but it's more broadly applicable. And so you have opportunities to observe those same skills before they ever, quote unquote, set foot on a social media platform. I love that. That's very helpful to think about. So, okay, so being real honest here, when I think about my kids on social media, I have two kinds of fears, and you've already touched on this a little bit, but my one fear is, are my kids going to do something bad or like, and I'm sure they will. I'm sure they'll make mistakes, share things they shouldn't share, say rude things intentionally or not, but then my other fear is, what about bad things happening to them? Like predators, somebody stalking them, somebody getting their information, sharing their private photos, those are like the two halves of, I would imagine most parents, worried about not just social media, but online interaction.
Yeah. And those are totally valid fears. And I think fears that we all have as parents. And so let's address the first one, right? That they're going to post something. And so I tell parents, and I know this isn't very comforting, but I think collectively, if we think about this, probably the chances that any of us are going to raise our kids all the way through and they're not going to post something that's going to embarrass us is, okay. So can we all just like go, all right, all of our kids are going to embarrass us at some point and kind of like take comfort in that, because they're going to make mistakes. They're kids. And I think as moms, we need to like give ourselves a little bit of a break because we're putting this pressure and understand that I think what makes us feel so vulnerable in that is that we know that when that happens, it's going to happen in the public space it's going to happen for all to see. Right. So what we're then struggling with is everyone's seen my child fail. So we're kind of, the mom in us is like wants to protect our child. But then as moms, I think we carry this mom guilt. And so it's then everyone seeing me fail is how we feel about it, which is not true, but that's how we feel. We feel like, and, we shame each other a lot. So, I mean, how many times have we seen something that one of our friends' kids has posted and we're like, we have this, oh, I'm glad my kid didn't say that, which is, it's horrible that we feel that way when really we should just be like, okay, that child's learning. They're learning, so we have to really look at social media differently and say it's communication. And the more we say that, the less we feel like that's a failure. Right. We don't think that like when our kids are, on the playground playing, I mean, kids sometimes, they throw sand and we're kind of like, oh, they're learning. And we want to protect them and keep them safe while understanding that they're not always going to make the perfect choice. So when they do, as a parent, get them off that field and correct them because it's a character issue. And honestly, like say to yourself, okay, this happened at home when I can still correct that character and build it up and, make adjustments and then get them back out in the field. Don't correct it on social media. Like you see a lot of that, right? Like my child's not allowed on, Instagram because they blah, blah, blah. And now you've just told the world and including future employers like, hey, my kid, they really screwed up or whatever. So like you're kind of still doing the same thing that you're telling your child not to do. Right. So get them off the field and lovingly correct them and guide them and then get them back out. But, teach your kid how to remove a post. So, and talk to them about it. And so we had a couple instances where we had to talk about, maybe it was something that my child put, and then it really wasn't anything that they said, but like the friend thing started spiraling downhill. And those were conversations about, okay, like because tone and how can social media is your home. So we would never let someone come into our home and begin to fight. So how can we correct that? How do you deal with those circumstances? Or maybe it's something that you posted that other people didn't understand. So how do we handle those situations? Maybe it's something that, yes, we just have to take down, you know? And so don't be afraid to have those discussions. I think we're afraid of that ever happening, but those are actually very productive discussions to have with your kids. You know, and so, yeah, there's going to be times where you may have to ask them to remove a post or take down a post or, you know, even sometimes just discuss a post and, you know, how can we get this back on track? But, you know, those are good conversations. Now, when it comes to privacy and issues, they post something that's like dangerous. You really got to stay on top of that and get on top of that. So that's something that we did not let slide in our home. And then the predatory, but that's a whole different category. So how do you have to begin that young with your kids. We are seeing online sex trafficking and predatory behavior at very young ages because young kids are more susceptible than even like older kids. I mean, it goes across the board, but you have to remember with young kids, everyone's my friend. They have lived in a world where technology is just a given. They have never known a world without it. So, you know, parents will say to me, I just don't get it. Like they don't understand. And that, you know, that online person is a stranger. And I'm like, yeah, our kids have never known a world where technology doesn't exist. So we have to begin early, talking to them about, you know, stranger danger, and it's online as well. And everyone who they say they are might not be who they say they are. And we need to role play that with our kids, and explain to them, like, you know, give them scenarios and do it in a fun way. Like when you're in the car, I give examples of cars, and it was probably because like when my kids are trapped in the car with me, you have a captive audience, right? So you know, turn off the radio, turn off that's a great time to like turn off everything and say, hey guys, like what would you do if, and then give a scenario question and see what their answer is, because you may be surprised at what their answer is. And then ask a little, well, what would you say if the person said this? What would you do? You know, because when you do that, you're empowering your kids, you're giving them the tools that they need. So if that situation would happen, and in the process, by you asking those questions, they know if that would happen, they're not scared to come to you because they know that you already know that may happen. Right? Like if they're approached by someone and someone says, hey, send me a naked picture, and they're very young, they may not know to come to you because their fear may be like, I don't want to tell mom, like they don't know what your reaction's going to be. They may not even know that, you know, that someone would ask them for that, or, you know, their way their brain is working is just amazing at that age. So if they know that, you know, and you're not going to freak out when they come to you, because you've already had that conversation. You've already told them, hey, I hope this never happens, but someone may ask you and here's how to respond. They're more likely to come to you. And the likelihood is that they probably will if that happens. So prepare them for that by letting them know. And then make sure that when you put them on those platforms that their accounts are private, that you go in there and there's not the ability to direct message, and that you show them how to block and report on every platform. Do not put your child on a platform without showing them how to block and report, and include you in that. Yeah, smart.
So are there some platforms that are better to start kids out on? Are there some, I don't know, like I don't use Snapchat myself, but I've heard this buzz that, on Snapchat, they can find your location and, you know, there's more, I don't know. So is it true that there are some safer platforms and some more, I don't know, loosey-goosey platforms, or I'm not sure what the word for that is.
Right. So I think with any of these platforms, you need to understand the settings and go in there and modify it. So the default settings for most social media platforms, virtually all of them, is public by default. So you need to know that. And the default setting for pretty much all of them now is to show location or to at least tag your location. So, so Snapchat is one. It will do that. You can turn off, you need to go in and turn off the Snapchat map. A lot of people just don't. And again, that's that situation where people put their kid on the playground and they haven't gone in and looked at the app. They don't understand the settings. But if you go in there and you can turn all that on private, the thing with Snapchat that worries parents is the disappearing messages. And as a parent, you really, really have to combat the messaging, not just for Snapchat, but for, and Instagram has Instagram stories now, right? Which disappear after 24 hours. So we have to combat the message that anything disappears. It's on a server somewhere. So, and again, you know, if your child sends out something that's, you know, pornographic or even something that's mean and, you know, mean-spirited and something that goes against what they would normally say, and they do it because, oh, it's going to disappear. You know, we need to let them know that it's on a server somewhere. And that, you know, that's not that we don't talk to someone differently online than we would face-to-face. So that's all part of the things that we're looking for in readiness with our child and that we're talking to them about as we're guiding them through social media. So I think Snapchat gets a bad rap because it's easy to just put the blame on one app, but it's not the app. And so I'm really against like labeling one app as bad. I think that there are apps that maybe are harder for some parents to monitor. And I think there are apps that probably are a little more risky for a child if they're struggling in an area. So the thing that's, I think, probably hard for a lot of parents to monitor with Snapchat is the area where all of the magazines come up. There's a lot of ick in there. And you have to go in and you have to curate that out. So you have to, you know, say, I don't want to see this. I don't want to see this. I don't want to see this. So there's a lot of like, you know, teen magazines that are, you know, how do you kiss a guy and Cosmo. And, you know, and I mean, I could show you some stuff that's just, you know, what I would call like along the lines of soft porn. And I tell kids, don't go there to get your news. I mean, you're getting like grocery store, you know, tabloid. That's the kind of news. I never even flip over to that section. What I like about Snapchat as a parent is I use it with my kids. So now that they're away for college, it's like our way of talking to each other like we would in our own home, if that makes sense. So it's the way we would normally have a conversation in our house. But it's, you know, again, like it's years and years of building up. We're not saying something that we wouldn't want on a server. It's just that we're not putting that on Facebook. You know, I'll send my kids a picture of like, oh, it's a late night in my office. I'm not going to send, you know, everyone that I don't know a picture of a late night. Right. And vice versa. So it's given us that ability. And for us and for the people that I connect with on Snapchat, it's more personal. It's the way to keep it personal. But again, I don't think like young kids, that's not wouldn't be the first app. That's the first app that a lot of them want to go to. I think that's like a trust building thing with you know, as a parent, that would be a trust building thing. My kids actually didn't get Snapchat until they were way older, like, you know, almost ready to leave the home. And one of my kids didn't want it. Like all their friends were on it and let's get it. And I just said, if you don't want it, that app, don't get it. But, you know, we're seeing the same thing with Instagram and the stories. And I have a lot of parents contact me about Instagram, like, well, I didn't know, but direct messaging is on. So we're seeing that same thing start to happen in Instagram, where you have the direct messaging and some of the stories that are curating. And that is more when we're seeing some of the things that are popping up in Instagram, that's more reflective of like your friends. So if your friends are starting to put out stories, or, you know, if you're starting to see some things that are like more porn and, you know, soft porn, what I would in their feed, a lot of times it's like, okay, let's start looking into who you're following. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so I am on Instagram, but it never occurred to me that just because I didn't have a need for this, that you can turn off direct messaging in Instagram.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. And is that something, so I'm guessing if one of my teenagers had an Instagram account and I went in and I turned off direct messaging, they would go back in and turn that on if they were being, dishonest, right?
Yes, yeah. And you can select who you want to receive those messages from too. So you can, if your account is public in Instagram, you can say like, I only want it from my friend or message from my friends or everybody. Okay. The danger is a lot of kids, when they get on Instagram, it's like I have a public account and they leave that, I can get a direct message from everybody. So a lot of the sex trafficking that we're seeing is because that direct message is from everybody. And so they're getting a message, or they're getting it from a friend of a friend. And what we're seeing is one of their friends will accept a friend request from someone that they don't really know. And it will start, kids will be like, well, that friend knows that person, so it's okay. And they'll start to, and then enough people will accept that friend. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so then your child will accept a friend that they really don't know because enough of their friends will know that person. So it's talking to your child about, do you really know that person? And we see that even on, I'm beginning to see it even on LinkedIn. So I've gotten within the past month, a lot of their fake accounts or spam, accounts. But I've noticed well, it looks like there's 5 or 6 people that I know that are follow. Yeah. So just think if adults, if we're like, oh, I always go check them out, but just think about a child, a teenager or a preteen. They're like, well, my friends all know this. So they're, they question that. They feel like, oh, like, well, all of my friends like this person. They all know them. So okay,
see, I'm guilty of that because I'll see somebody, who's friend requested, and I'll be like, well, they're friends with a bunch of other homeschool mom bloggers, so it's probably somebody in the homeschool mom blog community. And I mean, if it's a woman and looks like a mom, but interesting. Yeah, I have not thought of that.
We feel guilt about it. We feel like guilt, but we're letting that person like right into our home.
Yeah.
With a lot of the photos that we post. And so it's not necessarily rude. It's not rude at all to, even send a message if we have a question at all, especially with our kids, if they don't know them at all or whatever, because again, it's communication, right? So a lot of times what we fail to do is communicate at all and just go, oh, well, okay. But that's not really communication.
I'm not sure I know you. Where do I know you from?
Hey, hi, blah, blah, blah. My name is Leah. Like I see it looks like we have a few friends in common. Ask a question like that person would need to answer if they would know you without giving out any information about yourself.
Yeah.
So, but I think again, we don't look at social media as communication. And so we're not using it as a tool to communicate. We're just feeling like, oh, well, I've got to like accept this blindly. And we're kind of passing that along to our kids.
Yeah.
So,
guilty.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, not that I've passed along because we haven't gotten there yet, but I'm already seeing how like I might have that tendency. Like, oh, that would be rude to not, friend them or something or follow them or whatever. Right. So there are not, I mean, you're saying, okay, we can go in and we can set account to private or don't share the location or turn off direct messages, but there aren't really parental controls per se because social media accounts they're not like kid accounts that are under the purview of an adult who, can lock things or whatever. Are there apps or tools that would help a parent to monitor a social media account or something like that?
Right. I mean, there are some social media platforms for kids young like kudos that do give a parent control over that, that are beginning to roll out now. But yeah, if you want to really monitor the child that's 13 and up, that's going to go like maybe to Instagram, or something like that. Bark is really good. It's a fairly newer parental control app. And the thing that makes it different from some of the other parental control apps is it monitors Snapchat and Instagram, and also monitors text messaging. And what it's looking for, a lot of the parental control apps, what they initially started scanning for is, when they're scanning images, they're looking for like skin, right? So if we see too much skin, it's gonna, flag it for potential sexting or, a porn image, and you're going to get an alert on that. But that's not 100%, right?
Right.
So they're looking for in your text messages things that like may signal depression, things that may signal self-harm, things that may signal cyberbullying, and they're going to send you a message so that you can check that message and dig in. I mean, I tell parents all the time, sometimes you may see something on social media, and it may appear to be one thing and be something totally different, right? So maybe your child sends a message and, it has language in it, and you're like, oh, why did my child say that? Well, you may dig in and find out that, there's a whole backstory. Yes, maybe your child, told someone, something that was really brash, and even maybe used, language in it, but maybe they're being bullied. And so maybe there's a whole backstory. And it doesn't, again, mean that you need to deal with that text message, but maybe there's a whole situation that you need to be aware of as well. So sometimes as parents, like finding out these things, like we get like one little view of a situation, and we need to start digging to find more. So some of the parental monitoring apps, they give us a little clip, but know as a parent, like sometimes you need to get in there and explore, like, okay, we saw this image, but like, was there something else underlying or whatever? So really understand that when you have those conversations with your child, it's really easy to like, kind of blow up when you see the message or the photo, but really begin to get in there and explore, like, why did you send that text message? Why was this image sent? And you have to kind of be calm in those moments, and that's hard. It's hard as a parent.
It's hard. Yeah, Amy said over here in the comments when we were talking about like people might request stuff or whatever so that you don't freak out. And she said, yeah, we want them to know that we won't be shocked. So how do you not freak out if that actually happens?
Yeah. So Amy, that's a good question. Yeah. So I'll be honest, we had a couple times here in our house, and my husband works second shift. So I like to tell people everything happens the minute, like in the afternoon and evening, when you're the only parent here. So we had a couple incidences where I just had to say, thank you for telling me, or, hey, like, we need to talk about this, but I'm going to need a few hours to process, or I'm going to need to like kind of think this through, because I want to, I really want to be able to process the whole situation. And we're going to come back to this tomorrow. And that gives you time so that you can it really gave me time to kind of like have a freak out moment, like to go to the bathroom and cry and, or whatever I needed to do, kind of have my response not in front of my child. But that way, when I did have that conversation with them, I felt calm and rational. And, and we had this one really funny incident where, I told people I work from home. And so I was kind of in this pushing back and forth with one of my kids, right? And they kind of said something, and it was, it really didn't set well with me. And I don't even know how I stayed calm in that moment. And I just said, okay, I'm going to need you to leave my office now. Because I was kind of at the point where I was like, I'm just going to like, rip your head off, or I don't know what I'm going to do, blow up, just. And so they did. And I was sitting there, and I remember thinking like 2 hours later, okay, I need to talk to them about this, but I still need to like calm down. And before I could even get to that point, that child came back and said, Mom, I'm really sorry. Like, you were right. I was really being arrogant, and they apologized before I even got to the point that, we were going to sit down and talk about the comment that they had made. So I think sometimes giving yourself, it's okay to say to your child, okay, I'm going to need, and I think a lot of times it's really good to do that, because when you're dealing with a situation where, okay, maybe there was an image, or maybe there was a search that you saw and you're like, well, or maybe you just saw that they spent, 6 hours on, Facebook, or, whatever it was when they were supposed to be doing school. Sometimes you need to dig in and go, okay, do I need to apply parental controls, or were the parental controls not, what was happening? Did something get through parental controls? And you want to have a little bit of that backstory and understanding. Is there something that I need to do? Was it something my child deliberately did? When you have that conversation with them. So it gives you a little time to kind of not only process, but also to calm down a little bit before you have that conversation with them. And I found a lot of times with my kids, the things that they did, they were hurt with other kids, hurt by other adults, frustrated. And me being in that sense of okay, I'm calm, we were able to talk through it. And the conversations were actually family and what I call team building. And they felt like, okay, I'm protected here. And my mom is my advocate. We came out of it. There were a few times where I had to say, okay, we got to take the phone, or you've got to, but they actually accepted it, because at the end of the conversation, they felt like mom's on my team and she's protecting me. Does that make sense?
Yes, totally. So, I mean, Leah, once again, I'm hearing, when you were talking about that example of somebody being in your office, this is not something foreign to the rest of life. This is not the whole thing about not freaking out. I'm thinking to myself, that's already happened to me. Yes. Not related to social media, but there have already been moments where I'm like, don't freak out. Don't freak out, not related to social media. So just so much of regular life. So much parenting. Yes, Amy, so much parenting. Okay, Let's see if we can flip through a few of these questions real quick. Some of them we've already touched on, so I'll probably just skip to the ones that are newer that we haven't said a lot about. Okay, so Janet said, how can we help kids to detect cyberbullying and stepping out without fear of losing friends?
Yeah, that's probably, I think, one of the most difficult things to deal with as a parent, because it's number one, so emotional. For your child and for you as a parent. Because again, we're talking about communication, right? So when you start to deal with cyberbullying, you're dealing with a lot of times issues where you have to address another parent if that doesn't go well.
Right.
A whole big mix of things. So part of that is really laying the foundation of our home as a safe space with your child early. I know I say it all the time, but I can't stress it enough, so that your child feels safe even talking to you about it. A lot of times, kids are embarrassed to even talk to you about it. And even when you've created that safe space for them. So really work on creating that safe space for them in your home. And then really teaching them, okay, what does respect for self and respect for others look like? Because our culture is so different. It shows a totally different view, even in the dialogue that our kids see in media, in the dialogue that they see everywhere. So our kids get such a mixed message about it that when someone speaks to them really in a disrespectful way online, the first time it happens, it's like they don't even know, is that what it is, And I think for many of us, that's so really teaching them what that looks like and what, how to handle those situations and walking them through it. So having those conversations, and again, that's where a lot of those question and answers will come in, role playing, with your kids. The tech talk conversation cards that are the the freebie that you get. There's a lot of questions that that are in there that are just about social media. There's some on cyberbullying, and that's a lot of why I created those. And I tell people I still carry those around with me because anytime I'm around teens, I'll ask questions, and it's amazing what kids will tell you when they feel like they're in a non-threatening environment.
You know, in trouble. Yeah, we're just having a conversation.
Yeah. So it's really interesting to get kids' perspective, and you want to have, 3 or 4 or 5 positive conversations with your kids for every one battle you want to have with them, right? So I want to have a lot of conversations just about hey, what are some of your friends' favorite apps? That gives you a really great idea about what apps your kids are going to ask for and all that, then every time you have to say no, or it just gives you a lot of insight. So again, with those cyberbullying issues, kind of having a lot of those proactive conversations will kind of not prepare your child, give them a lot of resistance against it. And then again, having those conversations with them about when they begin to experience language on their social media pages that are spiraling downhill. I use the example of you're at the playground, right? So when you first put them on social media, you're watching, you're following those accounts, you're watching. And when you begin to see some of that happen, don't be afraid of it as a parent to maybe over dinner say, hey, I noticed so-and-so said, replied blah, 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 blah. What are your thoughts on that? And a lot of times you'll find they're yeah, it was really awkward. I'm not sure how to respond, Mom. And so again, that's great dialogue into where you can help them steer that conversation. And a few of those talks for us led to talks about, okay, and then I'm getting messages or, it led to our kids being open about other things that maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I hope that's helpful. And then, again, really understanding that sometimes when you see something, there may be a whole backstory, and just being calm in that moment. And then understand too that sometimes when you approach a parent, even if you have screenshots, you may not get the result that you are thinking in the resolution from that parent. And in those situations, your only role is to protect your child. So you advocate for your child, and that may mean severing a relationship, that may mean blocking an account, but your role is to, I'm advocating for my child. I want my child to see how you deal with this in a healthy way. And I'm not responsible for how someone else handles their situation. My role is to protect my child in this situation.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Leah, you mentioned those Tech Talk cards. So I'm going to go ahead and pop up a green button at the bottom of the screen right now.
Okay.
And if you want to, anybody who is interested, Leah is offering a free copy of her Tech Talk cards. If you click on the green button at the bottom there, it'll take you over to her site, and she's got a special page set up just for our viewers who are going to hop over there and do that. And if you're watching this on the replay, it's still live. It's going to be live, did you say, through November the 12th?
Yes, November 12th.
Okay.
Yes.
So Leah says that, of course, you can get the free Tech Talk cards immediately just by going over there and signing up for them. But then, Leah, tell us a little bit about the other thing that you were going to offer.
So I'm going to draw for a free winner from people that enter through that page for a service. So you can select a 45-minute consultation. If you just want to talk about our family doesn't have a digital media plan, what does that look like? Or there's a whole different, you select whatever you feel like you need to ask. And then, or teen social media auditing. So if you have a teen that wants to have their social media audited, it's a really great thing, especially if they're in their high school years and thinking about college, just to have a fresh set of eyes, look over their social media, understand maybe what colleges might be looking for. Because there are specific things, if they're applying for maybe a music program or a theater program, it's not a bad thing to have some things in their social media that show hey, I've been doing some things in my community. And, but then, we kind of scan through and look to see if there's maybe some things that they want to curate out of there. or I'll do a family social media audit. So you can choose, which based on the age of your family and what you think you need. So there's 3 services. You can select which one, the winner. So
awesome. And if you are watching this through Facebook, when this video is over, I'm going to drop that very same link in the comments of the Facebook video. So you will also have access to that. You can hop over and get your free Tech Talk cards and enter to win one of the services that Leah has to offer. All right. I think we have time for maybe one more question. Let's see. We kind of already talked about, are certain apps more dangerous than others? So I'm going to skip over that one. Let's see. Okay. Amy's got a good general question here. Amy says, how do we show our kids we trust them while also not foolishly giving them too much freedom?
Right. So you kind of like, I used to tell my kids that like your life's like a ball of yarn, right? So we're slowly releasing it. And by the time you're 18, you're gonna be holding that ball of yarn, but it's slow. And sometimes I might need to pull a little bit back. So we kind of take that approach.
That's a great analogy. I love that.
Yeah. So, well, it's not original. A woman from our church gave that idea to me when my kids were little, and when they graduated from our homeschool, we gave them a ball of yarn. So,
I love that. I really love that.
So when your kids first get on social media, I mean, it's just, we told our kids, like, here's social media account, but it's tied to us. And we're monitoring, because again, we're not just going to set you loose at a playground where, we're not sure what it is. We put them on the platforms. Every platform they were on, we taught them how, the settings for it, how you go in and adjust those, how you block and report, all of that, because by the time they leave home, they need to know how to manage that account fully, or by the time they're, whenever you release their social media accounts to them. With our kids, it was when they graduated high school, they were 18 and they had full access to all those accounts and they had to manage them. So during that time, it was kind of a slow release for us. And we really just monitored each child and, just watched how their readiness and kind of slowly started backing away. And it was with everything, like, are they paying attention to the updates? And if there was news that, I'm always getting tech news. So if there was a data breach, I'm sending them messages, hey, did you go in and change your password? There's been a data breach. And just because it's the whole thing. And I think we're so focused on things like, well, what if someone sends a message? We don't teach them all of the things like, are they not giving out their password to their friend? It's the whole thing. So
online security kind of stuff. And
yes, exactly. So we did what's called a slow release. We watched things like, are they obsessing over the app? Are they spending all of their time on the app, just scrolling through and liking, or are they spending excessive time on there just looking at things? Because that may be something we need to talk about. Maybe they're dealing, with self-esteem becoming an issue, because again, social media, it's communication. So you should be on there communicating with your friends, talking to them. And if you have a child that you begin to see, they're just liking, or they're just scrolling through, that's something to have a conversation about, because that will become a struggle. Are they becoming all of a sudden where they're just grabbing their phone at every little ping, every little notification and picking it up? Then we need to talk to them about balance. So all of those things are things that as a parent you want to monitor, because those will be things that they will struggle with when they go off to college or they go into the workforce. And we see it all the time. So again, the goal is that you send your child out into the world and they're able to use social media to communicate and, to live life to the fullest. So if you start to see those things that they're balancing, balance issues, and, those are the things you want to correct while they're still at home. So, it's just kind of about putting them in that playground, watching them, and then seeing where are those struggles that they may be having. And a lot of times, those are things that sometimes we have to kind of look at ourselves and go, oh gosh, am I struggling with a little bit of balance too? And,
Sure.
And those are, again, great things to talk about as families. Like, hey, I feel like we're all kind of struggling with a little bit of balance right now. So we're going to do some device downtime all weekend long, or, but being open and really talking to your family about that openly is super helpful.
Yes, I love that. And again, just like this is just parenting.
Yes.
And apply
It
to a
really
different arena. Yeah, that's great. That is great. Well, Leah, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. You have just helped me so much. I mean, with the details, yes, but even more so, just kind of like chill out. This is just parenting extended to another,
It
realm.
really is.
It's not like, yeah,
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 yeah. I mean, I hope we do get to the point where we just feel like, I mean, there are some serious things happening, the whole, sex trafficking thing, those are serious issues. But I think we see, they're so serious that we see them in social media. I think we blow it up and then we scare ourselves as moms, right?
sure,
But I
sure.
think we really need to just say this is a new thing that is part of parenting, right? But we can do it. It's just another safety. It's just
Yeah,
another safety thing, and we do it together. And yeah, and it's awesome that we can walk our kids through it. And really, again, I think for my family, it's been really a strengthening thing for our
yeah,
family. And so, yeah, I love the fact that I can, stay in touch with my kids who both live in different states. Our family's in 3 states right now.
yeah.
And it's beautiful that social media is what keeps us daily connected. And I love that. And so really it's just a matter of don't be afraid to walk through it with your kids to, you know, we have normal push and pulls with our kids about everything. So, just, stick in there with it. You can do it.
Awesome. Okay, so guys, if you didn't hear me earlier, click this button below to get a free copy of your Tech Talk cards that Leah talked about to spur some good discussion with your teens or soon-to-be teens about these sorts of things. If you're not already, please click up there on my name, Lynna at Live Without Training Wheels, and follow me so that you can be notified the next time that I go live. And thank you, Leah, so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.